Hey everyone, Britta Albert here. If this is your first time here, I'm a spiritual transformational life coach. It's my goal for this channel to help you overcome the obstacles that are standing in the way of you living your best and most authentic life. Today I have Justin Strickland joining me, and Justin is a former client of mine who is now on the road to becoming a life coach himself. And a little bit ago, a couple months ago, Justin and I were talking and he was telling me that he came up with a quarantine activity. He learned how to do a Rubik's Cube. And as we were talking, we drew the conclusion that I think you guys are going to find really interesting.
Hey guys, great to be here. As Britta said, my name is Justin Strickland, and over quarantine, I began to work with a Rubik's Cube. I decided that solving it was my goal, considering sitting at home and had nothing else to do. When I was a child, my grandmother had one of these in her house, and I would pick it up, play with it. Had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea that there were actually algorithms and ways to work with it and solve the cube. And with that, we're going to talk about what one of the main moves is that you're going to use throughout the process of solving a Rubik's Cube. It's called a right trigger and a left trigger. As we started this video, that was something that just crossed my mind. We've been discussing doing this video now for quite a while, and as we're hitting play, it hits me. You know, we're discussing triggers, we're discussing working through these problems, and it's in fact called a trigger. So when you're solving the cube, one thing you're gonna do is work through the triggers to get to the solved position. But once you get to the solved position, you're gonna have this. It's cool, right? Looks awesome. All these sides are solved. As soon as I got this solved, I realized something. It brought me joy for around 5 or 10 seconds. It was awesome to look at it, see that all the sides were solved. Now what? Now it's a paperweight. And in the end, what I found was you have this. You have a cube, all the sides match. Now I'm showing this to you all. It's a solved cube. Maybe I solved it, or maybe I just took this out of the box. But in solving it, I realized something pretty quickly. It brought me joy for around 5 or 10 seconds. It was great to twist it around, look at all the sides, they're all solved. Hey, this is awesome. Now what? And in that, I found that the Rubik's Cube, once it's solved, it offers you nothing. It's a paperweight. It's not even a real good conversation piece. As I said, you guys can choose to believe that I solved this, but even so, what's that really matter? And with that, it kind of taught me a little something about life. And that is simply, we spend our time focused on getting to the solved position. We see our problems, they're very clear, they're right in our face every day. We think, hey, if I can just solve these problems, that's what's gonna bring me joy. Well, in solving this, I realized that once the problem was solved, the joy was very short-lived. In actuality, it's the process of solving the problem and being able to share and experience in what it took to get from point A to point B. It's great to have this cube solved. It's awesome, right? Now what? So with that, I've come to find that the process we're after is just that. It's the process of solving our problems. It's not getting to a position of saying, I've solved all my problems and now I'm happy, life's good to go. At that point, what does life offer you? And one of the coolest things as I got into solving this, when it comes to solving a cube, there's one main move you use over and over, and oddly enough, it's called a left and right trigger. So to take the cube from a unsolved position to a solved position, you have to work with the triggers, kind of similar to life. As we're working through life, we find things that trigger us, that make us angry, that leave us depressed, whatever it may be. In the end, what we call those is triggers. And we have to work with those triggers to take ourselves from the unsolved position to the solved position. But understand that once you get to the solved position, the next step is to scramble it all back up and start over. Otherwise, what are we doing?
I love that. And I think one of the things that blew my mind the most, which you actually just told me today, was about the triggers. And how, how many videos do I already have about triggers and finding the treasure in triggers, which is something that I got from my teacher, Veronica. And when you work with your triggers, when you find that something makes you upset, makes you angry, makes you feel uncomfortable, something that you hate in somebody else, you realize that it's just a mirror reflection for you that is something that you actually hate within yourself. So when you find that you're angry at somebody, there's a lot of political tension out here. So this is a fantastic opportunity for people to look in the mirror if you have the courage. And that's to understand, what is it about this situation? What is it about this person? What is it about my neighbor? What is it about my community? What is it, whatever's going on that really upsets you and makes you feel, even at the very least, bit uncomfortable, guilty, something that you call that a trigger. It's not this feeling of peace. It's not this feeling of contentment. There's something that is in discord within you that is a trigger. And so then we examine it and we're honest with ourselves. It only works when you're honest with yourself and you start to heal what that trigger is. And once you heal that trigger, the trigger no longer has power over you. So when you work with the triggers of the Rubik's Cube, what are you doing? You're solving the problem. And with solving the problem, you have something called muscle memory. And then you can start to solve the problem without thinking about it. When you first learn, and you can tell me if this is correct or not, when you first learn how to do a Rubik's Cube, you're focusing on the movements and the technique that you just read about or you watched a video about. So you're very aware of the moves, you're doing it very consciously.
Absolutely.
And then once you get used to working with those triggers, it just happens so subconsciously, so naturally, so easily, that you have those people who can just do it really, really fast, and then they have those competitions.
Oh yeah.
Where you can solve a Rubik's Cube without even looking at it.
Exactly as she said. When I first started, the motions I would go through, they were clunky. I was very slow with it to begin with, and I'm certainly not one of those that can work through it in a minute or less. I have gotten my time down to around 2 minutes, keeping it there consistently. But as she said, it's just that when you're working through this, at first it's going to be clunky. You're going to run into things that just don't make sense. It's going to be difficult. But when you're working with anything new, isn't that the case? Have you ever stepped into something you've never tried before and just, hey, I'm great at this? Maybe you've gotten lucky here and there. But the truth is, when you start going down this path of self-discovery, what you're going to find is a lot of these things are new for you. And that's perfectly fine. No one expects you to be perfect at it to begin with. It's not giving up on it. That's the key. It's consistently moving towards what it is that you're after and just understanding right up front, this is not going to go smoothly to begin with. But after some consistent effort, my moves got very quick. I started to understand that once I do this, then this is going to happen. And as soon as this happens, this is the next move I need to make. The first time I went through it, I had no idea. I had no idea that it would consistently create patterns that all worked out the same way over and over and over. And it made me faster because I knew that once I pulled this trigger this way, it was going to line this up on this side. And as soon as it lined up there, all I've got to do is twist this way and boom, work with my next trigger. And that is it.
And speaking of triggers, really the whole theme of this video could be a huge trigger to some people because you either believe in reincarnation or you don't.
Ooh.
And this is not necessarily an argument or a place to trigger you. If you clicked on this video, then I believe that you're either genuinely curious or it resonated with you. So where does this analogy fall into the idea of reincarnation or the theory of reincarnation? Now, it's a fantastic analogy for life and how to grow with life. But again, what happens when the Rubik's Cube is solved? If we are eternal, then what would be the point of just solving it once? What did you really gain? Yeah, you had a fun time, maybe you got frustrated, maybe you put it down and walked away and never even tried it again because it angered you so much and frustrated you so much that you never could figure out the patterns. Well, where do you gain something from that? What was your experience about that? You are here. You're living your life. You can either choose to check out, you can choose to numb out, you can choose to block out, or you can choose to grow. And when you've grown and you've gone through the end of it and that Rubik's Cube is solved, it's that moment of happiness and what would you call that?
Bliss.
And then you do it again. And that's the joy in it. That's the fun in it. And that's when you learn new skills. And that's where you learn new tricks, because everything that you've done before, you don't lose your knowledge every time that you do the Rubik's Cube again, right? You just add to it. Just like you said, it was clunky to start out with, but the more you did it, the easier it becomes. And we know, we've seen it. There are people out there who can finish a Rubik's Cube, and I don't know what the record is, but I'm gonna say probably around 10 seconds, maybe
Somewhere in
less,
that range.
I don't know. There are people who can do it so flawlessly, so easily. Does it make sense that they could do that the very first and only time that they've ever completed a Rubik's Cube? Or does it make logical sense that it took them several thousand times to get that good?
Completely in agreement with what she's saying here. See, we've been discussing doing this video now for quite a while. We just now were able to get together and make it happen. Well, at the time we were discussing it, I was playing with this Rubik's Cube fairly regularly. I was going through it multiple times a day, and it was, I'd gotten pretty quick. Now today, when we got together, I haven't solved this now in probably 6 weeks, haven't messed with it. Now, when I got to solving it, it took me having to go through and kind of refresh my memory. That 2-minute solve time, that wasn't happening today. I had to work through it, and it took me a few minutes. It probably took me closer to 5 minutes to get it fully solved. And it was only because I was having to remember and remind myself and just pick back up on the motions that I hadn't used. So with that, you very well may have worked through triggers in your own life, but maybe it's been a while. Maybe it's something not necessarily new for you, but new again, and you're starting over with this. Hey, that's okay too. When you get into the process, like exercise for myself, I have gotten in and out of exercise, lifting weights and things over the years. And when you take a couple months out of the gym and you come back in and you get started, it can be really frustrating. You realize, hey, I'm not as strong as I was. This stuff isn't as easy as it was. But all it takes is that consistent effort, and next thing you know, you're building right back up to where you were. You're feeling good again. The things are getting easier again. So, if it's not something you work with on a regular basis, don't expect it to go flawlessly every time.
Yeah.
But if you're looking at it and saying, hey, I'm gonna go all in and I'm gonna work with this consistently, then you can certainly expect that in no time at all, it's gonna become second nature. It's gonna get easier and easier.
I just love this analogy of the Rubik's Cube. And it was never something that I ever looked at and was really inspired by until we had that conversation. And it was just one of those aha moments of revelation. It's like, wow, that could symbolize this, and that could symbolize this, and that could symbolize this. And of course, for you, you didn't actually go like, oh, it symbolizes reincarnation. For you, I think you were thinking more the process, like living your life now.
Absolutely. I'd actually, a while back, I heard, I can't even remember who it was that said it, but it was just a beautiful, beautiful statement, and that is that happiness comes from solving the problems. And you think about that. I mean, anybody watching this video, I guarantee you've had problems in your life. Maybe you're having problems in your life right now. But let's think back to the most recent problem that you solved. You found joy in the process of getting that problem solved. But as soon as the problem was solved, I mean, there's more. There's more problems to solve. And it may seem frustrating to look at it and say, oh, I've got so many more problems to solve. But if you take it from that perspective and think, I'm going to find joy in solving this problem, the problem's got to be solved one way or the other. I don't say it doesn't have to be. You can choose to ignore it. You can choose to brush it under the rug.
Yeah.
But I believe we can all agree that's not bringing you joy.
Yeah.
You'll find joy in solving the problems. And since I've applied that to my life, I can certainly say that I have found just that. I found joy inside solving the problems. It didn't bring the problems to an end, not all of the problems, rather. Certainly solving one problem may bring an end to it, but I've also heard that the solution to one problem is the creation to the next. So in solving this cube, the solution was, it was solved, and that was awesome. The next problem was, what the hell does this offer me now? It does nothing. It's a paperweight. So that created the very next problem, and that was that I needed to find a way for this cube to provide me with joy again. And there was no way I could do that rather than just messing it up and solving it again. And in each solve, as we've already discussed, I got faster. I found that there was joy in realizing I was getting faster at it. So with that, inside of all these processes, you can find frustrations. You're going to find triggers. But when you work with them and you work through them, you're going to find joy. And, you were discussing how the trigger, it being called that. In fact, it is. It's called the right and left trigger. I didn't even put that together until today. I did know that was the name of the moves, but as we were starting this video, it just hits me. This is what the move is actually called, and that just applies and makes this that much more symbolic.
I love that. Now, whether you take that as a awesome symbolization for reincarnation like I did, or whether you take it as an awesome symbolization for where you're in your life right now and how to work through it, I think we all can agree that if you are focusing on the end result and you're missing the journey, then once you reach that result, you've missed out on your life. Like, what is What is your life without the journey? What is your life without the process? What have you learned if you just bypass and you jump to where you want to be? What have you gained? What have you grown with? What can you take with you? And if you miss out on the journey, if you miss out on the triggers, if you miss out on solving it, yes, like Justin said, you can set it down, you can walk away. And what has that left you with? Something that you're going to have to end up getting rid of because it's going to bring you guilt and frustration that you let it get the best of you and you never finished it. And that's where people have these lives that are bitter and they're sad and they're lonely and they're angry and they live in victimhood and they judge other people and they blame other people. But then you have these people who are happy and content. It just all depends on what you choose to do with it, what you choose to do with the journey, and how present you are in the process of the journey. I don't know how to solve a Rubik's Cube. So I could buy a Rubik's Cube, I can mess it up, I can give it to Justin, and he can fix it for me. And I have this Rubik's Cube that's now fixed. And it literally is the same thing as if I just opened the package. Yes, I know this cube has gone through some stuff because I messed it up and I saw him fix it for me. But what did that bring me? What did that bring my life? It was taken care of by somebody, I guess, but what does that do for me? What does that do for the person that I am, for my own merit, for my own work ethic, for my own accomplishment, for my own knowledge? It hasn't done anything.
You can't grow from the work if you didn't do the work.
So I hope that this was inspiring to you guys, maybe give you a couple different perspectives, and I can guarantee you one thing, you'll never look at a Rubik's Cube the same way again. But thank you, Justin, for being here and sharing your knowledge and your information, your wisdom. And again, if this is your first time here, y'all, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Also, give this a thumbs up. Share this video if you can think of somebody that needs to hear this message. Help us to continue to grow this community, you guys. I am so floored by this last month and the amount of new subscribers and the amount of comments and the way that you guys have really been building this community. I am just absolutely floored, and I love you guys so much. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.